Star Wars Episode 9 is set to conclude the Skywalker saga and the sequel trilogy itself by writer and director J.J. Abrams. This is Mike Zero. If you guys are new to the channel, do make sure to subscribe to see future Star Wars content. Now, one big question that I've been getting a lot lately has all to do with Star Wars Episode 9 itself and how crowded this movie is really going to be. Now, we do know that J.J. Abrams is not only bringing a return of 3 legacy characters, that of course being Luke, Leia, and Lando, but we also have 8 new characters that will be introduced in Star Wars Episode 9. Now, what's really intriguing to me is, of course, splitting Star Wars Episode 9 into 2 films, whether or not that would be a good or a bad thing for the Star Wars franchise. I know a lot of you guys are talking about it right now. A lot of guys out there are messaging me on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, you name it, and a lot of people are just really wondering on whether or not it's really a good idea to essentially throw in as much stuff into Star Wars Episode 9 as possible. Now, to me, I think that 8 characters is a lot, and I think that's one big reason as to why Episode 9 should be split into 2 parts, 2 movies, if you will, where we could have a Star Wars Episode 9 and then a Star Wars Episode 10 that would actually further explain the stories between both Kylo Ren and Rey and bring them on new and different adventures. Honestly, I wouldn't be too surprised if Episode 9 ended on a big cliffhanger and we don't get the full arc of the story of Kylo Ren, and perhaps maybe they set up a trilogy that's based on, you know, Kylo Ren in his older years as like a real dark side user. They really could do something like that if they really wanted to, where at one point in time Kylo Ren can be the Darth Vader figure that's perfected in 3 whole movies, where at that point, you know, the sequel trilogy would be looked at as a prequel series. So with that being said, do you guys necessarily think that it's a great idea by Disney and Lucasfilm to split the movie into 2 parts? We actually know that a couple of months ago they were actually considering doing this because of how much, you know, stuff is being crammed into this film, but they're keeping it at 1 movie itself. Now, I think that if they were to do this, not only would it break the trilogy format, but it would also kind of just break the tradition of the Star Wars franchise. We do know that George Lucas and his original outlook on Star Wars was a 9-part series only, right? A 9-part story. A beginning, a middle, and an end. The end, of course, being the sequel trilogy. So, if they were to do an Episode 10, it would totally undo everything that George Lucas intended to do with the Star Wars Skywalker saga. So, with that being said, guys, what do you think about everything when it comes to Episode 9? You know, we do know that this movie is going to have the most characters, the most planets out of every single Star Wars film. It's going to have 3 legacy characters, Luke, Leia, and Lando Calrissian, and this will actually connect to the prequels and the originals, as well as Star Wars Rebels, some novels and books and comics and video games. I mean, the list goes on. This movie is actually going to cater to pretty much all Star Wars fans on different mediums out there. So, the great thing, alright, let's look at the benefit of actually splitting it into 2 parts. You would not only be able to tell more stories about the character of Luke Skywalker, but you could also tell more stories about Supreme Leader Snoke and kind of just dive into more of their past and what really sets up, you know, the series in between the originals and the sequels. Now, we do know that Andy Serkis has said before that his backstory is actually told to only Rian Johnson, J.J. Abrams, and himself. So those 3 actually know Snoke's backstory, but only those 3. Nobody else knows about the backstory. It's a big secret in case they ever wanted to make either a new Star Wars trilogy centered on Snoke, or if they wanted to make a future Star Wars film where it would actually answer a lot of questions about Snoke and Luke's backstory, you know? And what I mean by backstory is, of course, the stories of the events after Return of the Jedi, before and after the infancy of the First Order. And not only that, but Episode 9 Part 2, or whatever you would want to call it, Episode 10, would be a great way, a great opportunity to kind of make up for what was lost in Star Wars The Last Jedi. I know that a lot of people are very disappointed with that film, and a lot of people do have problems with the movie. So what would be great about a 2-part Star Wars story within Episode 9 is they could treat it as a film as one, but they'll actually just release it in different segments. That's probably the best way that they could do it. They don't have to necessarily call it Part 2, quote unquote. They could just release, separate pieces of Star Wars Episode 9 and name it differently. They could label it as Episode 10 or just something else if they really wanted to keep that trilogy format. Kind of like what they did, with the Pearl Harbor DVD. If you look at that movie, it's so long and it's split into multiple discs, and it's not called Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3, but the movie is so lengthy that you have to actually have like 2 to 3 discs just to watch the movie. Anyways, guys, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.